Good morning, everyone. This is Paul Mallory from the Thrive Tribe. Welcome to this latest Thrive Tribe conversation on the power of choice. I'm Paul Mallory, and today we're going to talk about the subject, the power of choice, with Tim Freke. Welcome, Tim.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Delighted to see you. Tim is the author of Soul Story. He's written more than 20 other books. He's a philosopher. He's an internationally respected authority on world spirituality and helping people to awaken, become more conscious. We're going to talk about his new concept of individuation later on, which is absolutely fascinating. So we're going to have a great conversation today. And Tim, this subject of the power of choice, I've personally had this mantra myself for 5 or 6 years now, since reading people like Viktor Frankl and his experiences of surviving concentration camp and discovering that the final freedom he had that nobody could take away was inside of him. So they couldn't take away his will, they couldn't take away his desire to survive and continue. And that really struck me when I read that. So ever since, I've kind of, as a coach and as a mentor of people, I've had this idea that we always have a choice in every moment, even if it's only the choice as to how we respond to things, because obviously we don't control everything that goes on, but we have some choice in how we respond. So I'm curious to know what you think about that. And I can imagine people out there thinking, it feels like we have less and less choice in a way. Well, two things at the same time, maybe. As consumers, it probably feels like we have endless choice. I wish there was less choice, because there are 150 brands of shampoo now that I have to choose from. So we have a lot of trivial choice. And then on the things that really matter, it feels like we have almost no choice. And I'm speaking of someone in England who's about to get a new prime minister chosen by 100,000 people in some niche group somewhere who are going to decide who my leader is. And I think a lot of people think, well, how is that democratic? How is that a choice? People in Hong Kong at the moment very clearly demonstrating that they feel like they're being controlled and ruled by, or, you know, an element in Hong Kong anyway, but I think quite a big element, feels like it's being controlled and ruled from outside. They don't necessarily feel like they have a choice. And sometimes the choice we do have feels like it's a bit cosmetic. It feels to me a little bit at times like we're living in some weird game show where we're part of this herd culture and we're voting for people based on personalities. Is that really a choice, and is it a good choice? I mean, the people of Ukraine have just elected a president who was a TV president, and they made him the real president.
And America as well, Paul.
Well, I didn't like to say it. So the big question is, do we even have a choice, Tim? Or do we just have to put up with it?
Well, I think choice is absolutely central. And what you said then about, look, we can always choose how we react, that's very important in any moral philosophy. Only exists because it's predicated on the idea that you have a choice. If you have no choice, morality is finished, gone. There is no morality. There is just cause and effect. So that's why when certain forms of spirituality and certain forms of science attack the idea of free choice, and you hear it's just an illusion, either the whole of the individuality is an illusion, therefore choice is an illusion, or choice specifically is an illusion, and we should talk about if that's real.
Yeah.
That's why it's so offensive to us, because it feels like this is an integral thing that makes me, is that I'm defined by the choices I've made. And the statement you made earlier about you can always choose your reaction, that's the very heart of Stoicism, an ancient philosophy, which just goes, look, you can't, you have to accept what happens to you, which they called, we get the word apathy from it, apathia. But actually it's not apathy like not falling back, it's more like a deep acceptance. And then you choose how you respond. And that's, it's a very deep old idea. And then, so I think that just seeing how important choice is and having a strong sense that it's a reality and can't be simply dismissed. That's a important philosophical point. And then the other points you raise also, I hope we get a chance to explore, because my sense is that we have massive choice all the time, and that although it is cosmetic, a lot of it, it's kind of nice. I mean, I remember, I'm sure you do, when you went to get a hot drink, it was, do you want a tea or a coffee? And that was it. Yeah. It wasn't like, do you want this sort of with this, with a 3 of those, and then this milk, and that and upside down of this version, and do you want it iced, and all of that. And it is easy to take the piss out of that and just go, it's ridiculous. But it's actually a sign of just how much we want choice, which is why when we look at things where we don't have choice, which you've been mentioning, we feel offended. We feel like, well, hang on a second, I should have choice. And that's because our level of individuality is so high now in a way that it just wasn't. I mean, most people in history didn't have much choice at all. I mean, they were just born into a certain social station and scraped through and stayed alive for as long as they could and died. I mean,
we'll probably come on to it as well when we talk about individuation later, Tim, but I'm just reflecting on us having more choice these days. I think also part of that, I don't know how to articulate that, but part of the social media effect, it seems to me, is becoming an imposition of a mass choice on individuals. I mean, what I'm trying to say is I think there's enormous pressure on individuals nowadays to conform to whatever the latest group decision is. So in terms of choice, we need to be careful, don't we, about is choice conforming to the mass choice, or is choice being the person who stands up and says, well, I don't actually agree with that. I think differently about that.
Let's just go into the big question, maybe to start with, the heavy duty one, because because if we can see what choice is, then I think all of that becomes clear. And the choice is mostly, when science attacks choice, it does it because it's reductionist. So it goes, look, this experience you're having of consciousness at all is merely the byproduct of a piece of meat in your head. And that's merely chemicals doing their thing. Chemicals is just physics doing its thing. All of that we can analyze with cause and effect. And if you were able to analyze the movements of the atoms accurately enough, you'd know what I was going to say next. And there's this epiphenomena, this side effect of me thinking I'm choosing anything. It's a horrendous idea, and I think it's completely untrue. And the reason I think it's completely untrue is is because I think reductionism, which is what people often assume science must be, is flawed. Actually, I think for 100 years now, science has not been philosophically reductionist. It's been what I would call emergentist. And that's the opposite of reductionism. So reductionism goes, if you want to understand a complex phenomena, reduce it to the simpler phenomena, and you understand it. Emergentism says, look, the whole universe has evolved over the last 14 billion years from a very primitive state of just hydrogen and helium and primal matter into this vast complexity we experience of you and me as human beings with choice and all of those things. And that in that whole process, which has got us from hydrogen to you and me having this conversation, new things have emerged all the time, obviously, which cannot be reduced to the things they came from. That's the whole point. You can't reduce them. So my favorite example with this, because it's just so funny and obvious, is my body is made of chemicals, but if you took the chemicals and put them on a pile on this seat, you would not be having this conversation with them.
Yeah.
So clearly I'm not reducible to just the chemical components. It's more than that.
Yes.
And I think therefore we can start to understand that what we experience as choice is an emergent phenomena. It's something which is increased as the universe has evolved. So something has got us from hydrogen to this. And as many philosophers have pointed out, that means that there's something creative in the universe. Now, you don't have to have a big man with a beard creating things. There's a natural creativity in the universe which has led to novelty, constant novelty. That the creativity is here right now. And it's happening right now. It's just on a very emergent level. We're experiencing that creativity in the realm of the psyche, in this realm of ideas, so that we are actually creating a new sentence. I am creating a new sentence spontaneously right now. So the universe, the creativity in the universe works with whatever's available. So if you've only got hydrogen to create with, you can't create very much. But once it's evolved to this level where you've got a whole human being experiencing consciousness with ideas, that creativity is much, much greater. And I think that's what we experience as choice. So if you really pared down what a choice is in a simplest form, it's that I can imagine doing this, or I can imagine doing that, and then, before I've done them, So I create something in the imagination, and then I go, I'm going to do that one. Am I going to raise my right hand or my left hand? I can imagine both, but I'm choosing this one.
Yeah.
And that's the creativity of the universe. That's not only real, it's the thing which has made existence possible.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it, Tim. And I think that's addressing my concern about the mass choice thing, in the sense that your description there of using imagination, which I think is probably a skill that we can develop and get better at, applying imagination to the situation to say, but are there any other possibilities, rather than leaping at the first one that comes along.
So so the thing that comes from that for me is, this is a slightly different subject, and we're throwing a lot of big ideas, philosophical ideas, but these philosophical ideas really change your experience of life. So a very important idea for me is that in the nature of time, that the analogy, and it's only an analogy, time passes is not quite accurate. It's truer to say that time accumulates. So there's more past now than when we started this conversation. There's more past now than when human beings evolved. There's more past now than when the Big Bang happened. And that every moment like this includes within it implicitly everything that's happened before. And it's a creative thing. It's a new moment. So it realizes a new potentiality, and implicit within it, within this moment, is everything that's ever happened before, which is what makes it this moment. And it's that past which it's like it creates habits which we experience, but it's also the whole of nature. It's one big habit. This is an idea you'll find in people like the physicist Lee Smolin or the biologist Rupert Sheldrake. So that everything is playing out of a habit, including you and me. Now, when we just play out the habit, there's no creativity.
Yes.
So that's where things stay the same. So there's something repetitive in life, and there's something creative in existence.
Yes.
Choice is the creative. So if we are just going along with our habitual way of being, we're not making a choice. If we just go along with the herd, if we're not individuated enough that we think we're making a choice, but really laying out a habit of a collective, that's what you're pointing to.
Yes.
Which is why you said we could increase our choice, I think. And I think you're absolutely right. By thinking for ourselves, by individuating, by making things more conscious, we realize how much choice we've got. And so most of the problem for most of us is we have free choice, but not enough of it. And it's not because society is stopping us, although that does happen. It's because we are stopping us. We haven't made conscious the chance that I could react to this differently. I don't have to just play out this habit. I can be creative in my response.
And that's really resonating with me, Tim, because I'm thinking from what you said that it feels like the past that has accumulated up to this point is potentially both a resource, but could also be a what's the word for that? An inertia or a drag.
Yeah, exactly right.
There's good past and not so good past.
Yeah, I would call it paralogical. It's both. It's both, and you have to see it both ways. The past is great because we repeat. Isn't repeating great? It means that when I say these funny noises, you know what they mean because you've already heard them before, and everything needs repetition. It's a great thing. Most habits are wonderful, and then there's a whole load that don't serve you, and that's where you need choice, and that's why choice is so important. When you said earlier, I completely agree with you, because it is the creative function of the universe. It allows us to take things forward in our own lives and collectively, and not just get stuck in the thing we're in.
Yes, and the other thing that really resonated in what you said just now was that I think we all run the risk from time to time of using these things as excuses for not making choices and not standing up for what's right. When people say I have no choice, or I have no part in this democracy, or I have no democratic mandate, whatever it might be, what's the point in voting? When people say things like that, they're actually excusing the fact that they're not making a choice. In fact, they are making a choice. They're choosing not to participate or to...
No, because if you really think that, you can choose to act in a different way. You can choose to have an impact on society in a more direct way, for instance, if you feel like, well, the vote's not counting for much, which, is understandable because because the system is obviously flawed. It's old and we need to be creative with it and blah, blah, blah. And because there's so many of us.
Hmm.
So we can, but you can choose. I mean, I'm thinking here as we're talking about the existentialist philosophers, Jean-Paul Sartre and all those guys,
Hmm.
who really homed in on this sense of choice being so fundamental to our humanity, and then became overawed by suddenly realizing, oh my God, I'm so free.
Yes.
My level of freedom is kind of infinite.
Yes.
Even given the limit of the past, that,
Yeah.
like right here and right now, it has to be this way, but how I react to it and what I do next, it's
Well,
pretty big.
in fact, a lot of freedom comes from recognizing that you're limited, doesn't it? In other words,
Well,
when you're unconsciously limited, you're going to act out of habit without knowing you're doing it. As soon as you become aware that you're doing it, then you have some choices open up.
that's the importance of awakening. Is, meaning really make something conscious. Be conscious of more,
Yeah.
I think, because we are all driven by unconscious things. And most of what happens in our psyche is unconscious. And that's a good thing, because we can't fill our consciousness with everything. It just drives you nuts. But not always a good thing. So being able to look at where there's a lot made in and maybe we should address this, because I'm sure the people listening to this will be intelligent folks who are well read, and they will be aware of things like the claims that the free will doesn't exist because you can measure the brain doing something before the person is conscious of it.
Yes.
And so therefore, actually it is that consciousness is kind of just like something hovering, watching.
Yes.
And the process is just happening. This is a very common claim. And interesting, because that's true. But my sense for myself is, look, that's the point. What conscious choice does is it slows us down. It brings things up in the imagination before we act. So, the other day I was walking in my hometown, Glastonbury, and I was by a school, and a ball came over the wall and almost hit me.
Mm-hmm.
And my body just reacted. And then I thought, oh, the ball's come over the wall. But it was quite a long distance before I knew what was happening. I just reacted. My body made a choice, in effect, an unconscious choice. And that's what most of our choices are.
Yes.
But the whole point of consciousness, it seems to me, is it slows that down so you can actually change the way that you're unconsciously reacting. Yes. So if I wanted to stop my body doing that, I'd need to really make that conscious so it didn't flinch. It was like if the whole point was to catch the ball, for instance, then I'd have to work on that. And that's what learning is. Yes. So far from being negating choice, I think it just points to what choice actually is, which is the ability to imagine possibilities before acting on them.
Yes.
And then to choose. And so that ability, and so when you're talking about the unconscious, it seems to me like what's throwing up the possibility, because you're not doing, it's regressive, isn't it? Forever. Yes. So yes. You can't go back and back and back with consciousness. Something is throwing up this or this. So you may need to go back into yourself to go, is there another option here? Where's this coming from? Is it coming from a good habit or a bad habit? Yes. So expanding choice means getting to know yourself. I suppose is the easiest way of saying that.
Yes, I think that's really powerful. And I've done a series of videos, Tim, on something that I call freestyle thinking, which is just trying to encourage people to be. In fact, you joined me on one of the videos for a conversation about this. And just trying to encourage people to become more conscious of their choices and their decision processes, and in particular to be aware of the influences acting on them from outside.
Yeah.
Because we just don't realize the extent to which we're influenced, and as you rightly say, making so many unconscious choices, just accepted as natural. It's just the way life is.
Yeah, because we individuate. Becoming conscious is a process of individuating, becoming unique, a unique thing. Yeah. And we individuate from the collective. We're all born into a culture or a subculture or all of that, family, a social group. And that constitutes the way we think.
Yes.
And most of that is just going on, which is why most people don't get beyond that.
Yes.
They just think they think in the way that their peers think, and that's what they see the world as, which is why we have so much conflict between groups, that are convinced that this is the truth, just because they happen to be born in it.
Yes.
religiously or politically or whatever. But as you individuate, you doubt, and you come out and you become your own thing, at which point you can choose, well, the most fundamental thing, you can choose what you believe.
Yes.
And choose how
Right.
you see the world,
Yes.
rather than just taking that for granted, which the vast majority of human beings through history have just taken for granted, the way of seeing the world they were born into. And we're changing that. We're changing that. And we
So that's a really nice opportunity for us to segue, I think, a little bit into individuation, because you've talked there about individuating, about becoming who you really are, bringing out your uniqueness into the world, which, is an idea which has been around for a long time. I think people will be familiar with enlightenment, awakening, all of those things. And all of those things we're all working so hard to try and become more of. And now you're talking about this concept of individuation, which is more a collective evolution, as I understand it. So how does that relate to individuation?
So we've been through a period of intense individualism. And largely, I think that's been a fantastic thing. I think there's much further to go. I think we should carry on. And that involves becoming more ourselves, individual, more conscious as individuals. And we separate ourselves from the unconscious oneness, as it were, the unconscious tribe, the unconscious nature even. But I think there's further to go, because I think what's happening now is really interesting, is that as we become more individual and we become more conscious, we're able to recognize on a very deep level, oh, look, we are interconnected with all of life, with all other human beings. And on a very deep spiritual level, actually, we're one with the universe. What else could we be? What else could I be but an expression of the universe? There's nothing else I could be. And so I am the universe. I'm the universe as Tim, meeting the universe as Paul. I am the evolution of humanity as Tim, meeting the evolution of humanity as Paul, and so on. And once you get that, there's a profound sense of oneness which arises. And there's an immense compassion because you're connected. You're communing with others. And I think what's happening is we're evolving then from individuals into what I've called unividuals, which are individuals conscious of unity. And I think this is the latest thing that's happening in the evolutionary process, which has been going on for 14 billion years. It's this next step. So paradoxically, we're separating ourselves off from the herd by making ourselves conscious as individuals, and then through that consciousness actually recognizing that we're one with the whole thing. But we're not losing our individuality. It's actually like the fruition or the flowering of that individuality into something bigger than itself. So that awakening in a spiritual sense is no longer about individual enlightenment. It's about coming into this collective recognition of something bigger than ourselves through our individuality.
So this is almost what you would call a paralogical idea again, it seems to me, isn't it? What I love about when you talk about paralogical thinking is the idea of holding two opposing ideas in mind at the same time, and maybe they're both true at the same time. Because, I think in the modern age, I detect that people want simple, pat answers to everything. I watched you talking on a video yesterday about the law of attraction, for example, and articulating really well that, there isn't one law that is the answer to everything. And if you really apply it, everything will come true and you have a magical life. It's more nuanced than that. It's more subtle than that. And I think that's very much what you're saying here, isn't it, with the relationship between individuals and individuals?
Yeah, it's certainly in spirituality where I spend some time, often people think, it's either all one or you're an individual, but the truth is it's both. And that's true in scientific terms. I'm an individual. I'm sensing the world from this particular place. I'm different to you, but also the whole universe is one thing. It's one energy arising as all these individuated forms. That's the key. The one arising as individuated forms. And the both and, I think, is that when through that individual, the universe recognizes it's the universe, to put it in a very grand way, that actually we can come to this state where we recognize this fundamental unity with everything. And it is as significant a jump forward in the evolutionary process as was the evolution of individuals. And we take that for granted, but we've been bodily individual for quite some time. But that ability to really be individual psyches, individual souls, that's something as a mass phenomena, it's very recent, very, very, very recent. And you can see the beginnings of it. People often trace it to people like Socrates and people like that. We're talking 2,500 years ago only.
Yeah.
The beginnings of the arising of the idea of yourself as an individual, rather than part of a tribe or a family, a collective.
Yes.
And we've really developed that, especially, I think, in the last 100 years.
Mm. And so moving forward into this sort of world of individualism, which seems to be the next stage of evolution, and I'm one of those people who thinks that we've really got some fairly urgent work to do on evolving ourselves as human beings for all sorts of reasons, because otherwise there won't be any human beings. So I think it feels like a moment in history to me, Tim. It feels like and I'm actually very optimistic and positive about it because I choose to be, and because actually I think there are two options here. One is exploration of the human species, and the other is actually a step up into something much better than we've been.
Yeah.
And that's an incredibly positive thing. And I think we have all the impetus and motivation that we need to make the step, which it maybe hasn't been there in the past.
Yeah, and I think you're completely right. But I think, I mean, the joke that you made is deep. I think that there is a moral imperative for us to choose to take a positive or an optimistic view on this, because if we don't, we will not succeed. And there's something about, and that's not just wishful thinking. That's actually going, look, life itself is fundamentally optimistic. It's all, you're going to go to look at little bits of grass pushing through the concrete, and you think, wow, that tiny little bit of grass has gone concrete, get out of the way. And that's us. We need to harness that creativity, that life force, that thing. And then we need to address these big problems. And the other thing I think we need to do, which is very dear to my heart, is we need to acknowledge how many problems our forebears have actually solved for us so far. So we need to step out from this 24-hour news cycle of negativity. We need to realize that we need to be conscious that we're hardwired to see negativity. That's the first thing, and for good reasons. Because when my kids were small, probably I'm still doing it. I'm sure you would have done the same. I'm with my kids. I'm looking out for all the dangers.
Yeah,
that's what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I'm looking after them, but I'm looking at danger.
There's priorities to stay safe.
Hardly ever were there any dangers, but I was looking at the whole time, just in case.
Yeah.
And that's what we're hardwired to do,
because
dangers are far more important to be conscious of than anything else. Because they can kill you. So that's what we do. And now what's happening is we're getting this feed that feeds into it the whole time. So we think the world's in a terrible state. It's not. The vast majority of what's going on in the world is better, far better than it's ever been. I mean, so much better. You can't even get your head around it. But most people think it's all going wrong.
Yes.
No, the progress on just about every criteria you could want to look at is immense. And there's new problems which our ancestors didn't face. Global warming, for instance.
Yes.
The products of our success, in effect, we've been so successful, we've created new problems. And we need, if we're going to face those new big, urgent problems, we need to acknowledge how well we've done with the others. And to go, okay, if we were so creative, we could solve those problems. We're so creative, we can solve these problems. We just need the will and the focus for our choice. We need to choose it.
So is that the essence then of individuation, do you think? Is it about coming together to make better choices collaboratively? How do you perceive individuation?
I think that's a beautiful, I haven't heard it said quite like that, but that's a beautiful way of putting it. The big change that happens, and this is the moral aspect, is you're making better choices, and the better choices are those that serve the whole. And that's the moral jump. It's no longer just a better choice for Tim, although it is. It's a better choice for everything.
Yes.
And what we need to do is that we need to make better choices for everything. And everything isn't just us as an individual, or even us as a tribe, or even us as a species. It's the whole of the planet. We need, that's the right choice. And as you individuate, you know that's the right thing to do, and you're willing to do that, even if there's a personal cost.
Yeah. Yeah, which kind of encapsulates the whole issue of global warming in a sense, doesn't it? Because it's been created by satisfying individual needs and individual motivators, and now we're able to see the results of what we're doing and say we need to make a better choice for the whole of the planet.
So many of our problems, probably this is always the case, but our problems right now are arising from our success. So we have solved the food problem to such a degree that more people die from obesity than they do from starvation, many more. So, okay, that's interesting, isn't it? We've solved our desire to be comfortable, and who wouldn't want to be? It's great, don't you? I love the modern world. It's wonderful. We can do this. But there's a cost. And now we're finding, oh, hang on, there's a cost. So we need to do it either in a different way or less of it, or we need to have a higher priority. And that's why choice key. We need to collectively make those choices, and we need to collectively tell the people who have the power to implement those choices that's what we want them to do. And that needs us to be more conscious, to step beyond just going along with, well, this is the way it is now. It's like, well, okay, but we need to reflect and ask ourselves, is this a sustainable way? And what will come from that? I am being very optimistic here, but why not? I think what will come from that is a whole new form of society. And we'll look back and go, wow, that was fantastic. Great. God, who would want to be stuck in that early 21st century society?
Yes.
God.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we moved on from that.
Yes, and I hope it takes us forward into a new way of thinking about some of these big issues about, systems and democracies and politics and all these things, which my despair at times is thinking, my God, I feel like I'm in the 18th century or something with the way some people are talking.
Yeah.
It's just
because we've got in the UK, our system was developed then, and the problem with this is the habits again. Everything includes the past. So there was a creative burst. There's been numbers of them that set up our parliamentary democracy. It was a brand new, amazing thing. It's been a really good, which is why it's served us so well. And now we're stuck with it. And it's really hard to change it because there's vested interest. All of the past repeats. It's like, so everyone just goes along with the way it is. Yes. And actually, I think most people know that it needs a major move, but that takes energy, and there's all sorts of other problems that may be more important right now, and blah, blah, blah. Yes. But what we can see is we must build decision-making, novel, creative decision-making systems for humanity generally, if we're going to implement our better choices. And that means limiting corruption, vested interest, all those, because those people, what corruption is people not making better choices. That's making choices for me.
So what I'm feeling energetically from this conversation now is actually what we can all individually do is take this agenda forward of individuation, spread this word, get more and more people thinking this way and talking this way, and it will just kind of happen.
Yes.
Because you just need to get people in this mindset, don't you? Of this, and I guess that's what you mean by the evolution into individuation.
I love that, Paul. And that's exactly why I coined the word. I mean, I coined it as a philosopher because I want to explore ideas. But I also, I'm with Karl Marx in this, that philosophy is about changing the world. It's not just about describing it.
Yeah.
And it felt like, well, if we have a word for it, and so far I've mentioned it to people in America and Japan and here, there's been a real sense of, oh, that's good, because that's useful.
Yes.
Because it enables you to go, yeah, I get that. I'm a individual. I haven't suppressed my individuality. I haven't, I don't, all that I don't exist of stuff you get in spirituality, none of that.
Yeah.
The opposite. My individuality is linked up to an understanding of unity with the environment, with the human species, with the all of life, and with the whole universe. And therefore, that's my priority. It enables us to have a conversation and self-define ourselves in a new way. And in simply doing that, it will change. I mean, it will be the foundation for change.
Yes, but that's how it will happen. Yeah. Fantastic. We've just got a few minutes left, Tim. So I wanted to make sure we didn't miss talking about this wonderful opportunity coming up. I'm going to join you on the 18th of July up in Broughton Hall Estate in Skipton in Yorkshire for
Yes.
a weekend retreat on individuation. Can you talk a little bit about that? Are the places still available, by the way, and can people join if they choose?
There are places still available. As you know, Paul, it's the most fabulous venue. It's a
It
stately
looks
home.
wonderful, I've got to say. It's absolutely stunning.
It's truly, people should just go out on my website and have a look at the pictures and nothing else.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic venue. Not only is it a stately home with a great estate, but it's also the gentleman who owns it is really keen on moving consciousness and has invested a lot of money in a state-of-the-art wellness center, which is where we'll be. There's a beautiful restaurant. So we will be taken great care of. In that space of being able to relax somewhere beautiful, what we'll be doing for 4 days is exploring the experience of being a individual. So that there's the philosophy and the ideas and the stuff we've been discussing, because you can get that, it really helps. If you understand, for instance, like we have here, oh, that's what choice is. Yeah, choice, I see what it is and why it matters. It makes a difference.
Yes.
But then there's also the direct experience, which we've explored together before, and you know how strong it is, where you actually come into, oh my God, I am one with the universe.
Yes.
And when that happens, this sense of oneness is not just an abstract thing. It is, I call it compassion, but another word is love. That there's a bodily recognition of my oneness with another person and a communion with that person.
Yes.
And it's such a powerful experience of such life and joy and love. And so my aim is that we can have that experience together, and I'm absolutely confident that we will. I just did it in America. Every single person had it. I just did it in Japan. Every single person had it. And my hope and intention will be every single person has it at this retreat, so that we can go out into the world as ambassadors for individualism, that we actually can, that this isn't just a weekend off to go, well, that was nice, although that's good too, but actually it's a way, like exactly what you said. Okay, now we can take this, understand what it is, share it in the world, and help move us on, help us individuate.
I couldn't be more excited about the venue or the content.
Right. Well, that's a great combination, isn't it?
It feels like a winner. How do people register if they want to join? Is it timfreke.com or?
Yeah, timfreke.com. I've got a funny name. Google me, you'll find me, as long as you spell it Freke.
Yes.
And on the events page, there's information about that and what we'll be doing, and loads of other videos as well. Videos on YouTube. There's a new podcast, The Freak Show. Just look for that wherever you get your podcasts. I'm doing this great series, What is Life, talking to some seriously amazing thinkers such as Rupert Sheldrake, Neil McGilchrist. We've got another one coming out soon with Ken Wilber. These are very interesting people to listen to.
Yeah.
So there's lots on there, all for free. Go and have a look. And I'm doing an online Q&A very shortly as well. So just these are free. Just check it out on my website. And
there's
anyone
plenty going on
towards it, I just want them to be able to interact with us. And of course, there's a community of which we are both involved, called the International Community of Individuals, which again is about trying to help people come together to support each other to bring in this new evolutionary consciousness.
Fantastic. Tim, thank you so much. It's been a delight, as always. I knew it would be. And I'm really looking forward to the 18th of July up in Yorkshire. That's going to be something special, I think.
Me too. Thanks so much, Paul. Fantastic.
Thanks, Tim. Speak to you again soon. Bye, everyone.